Continuing to break down the San Francisco 49ers 2025 draft class. Yesterday was all about size with a couple of big defensive tackles. Today, it's about speed. Third-round linebacker Nick Martin, fourth-round wide receiver Jordan Watkins. What will they bring to the San Francisco 49ers? Fits, scouting reports, and more coming up on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker at BD Peacock at Crocky209. Thanks, everybody, for making this your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We really appreciate all the everydayers that hang out with us. And I know a lot of you still aren't subscribed to this podcast. And so let's strengthen that algo, right? Let's get this podcast in front of as many people as possible. Make sure you smash that subscribe button, whether you are watching on YouTube or listening wherever you like to listen to your podcast. If you're new to the program, welcome. Hang out with us every single day, breaking down the San Francisco 49ers. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers brought to you by Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Turn any TV into your Xbox. No console needed. Just head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to learn more. Nick Martin, 5'11 and a half, 220-pound linebacker out of Oklahoma State. And I talked about speed in the open, man. And this guy is fast, 4.53, 40-yard dash, 38-inch vertical at the combine. And when I put Nick Martin in my mock draft of the San Francisco 49ers, I didn't have him in the third round due to that size, but I have him in the fifth round. And I said something that might be blasphemous to some folks. And this is before the Niners even took him. I said, man, if you're looking for the guy who plays maybe the most like Dre Greenlaw, I think it's Nick Martin. And I thought people were maybe sleeping on Nick Martin a little bit. Now, I didn't expect the 49ers to like him even this much. They took him at pick 75 overall, Croc. But he's a really easy evaluation for me because clearly his strength is his size and his ability to trigger and go get the ball carrier. And clearly his weakness is he's not very big. And I would say, I mean, he ran 4.53, right? So he threw down the speed. You see the speed when you watch him on tape, Croc. I might make this statement, and you tell me if you agree with it. Nick Martin, as far as just John Lynch used the term run and hit when talking about him. When you just talk about that run and hit, triggering, getting downhill, going sideline to sideline and finding the ball carriers. He might be the best linebacker at that. And we're talking included Jihad Campbell and Carson Swessinger and Demetrius Knight, the linebackers that went ahead of him in this draft. The best at that, going and getting the ball carrier sideline to sideline in this entire draft.
One thing that is very clear and jumps off the film when you're watching them is just really that closing speed. And we know he ran fast. What he ran? 4.53. I believe, at the combine. So this is a guy that can run. And if you want to compare him to a current 49er, I do think Dre Greenlaw, there's some discrepancies with what his speed was, but the last time I looked, it was low 4.5s. I don't know why in my head I have 4.7.
He ran 4.7.
The conversation was 4.7, but his GPS tracker time or miles per hour was really high. So they're like, oh, disregard the 40 time. GPS says he's fast. But then when you Google right now, if you were to Google Dre Greenlaw's 40 time, it says like 4.53.
I don't know about that. I remember the 4.7 time he ran. And I think this is what happened because Dre Greenlaw was undersized and very similar size. In fact, they're the exact same height, 5'11 and a half. Dre Greenlaw, I think, weighed in at 237 at the combine. I don't know that he played that big. I'm guessing what happened with Dre Greenlaw is he was trying to bulk up because even back in, what year was that, 2019 draft? 2020 draft?
19, yeah, with Deebo Samuel and Nick Bosa.
Yeah, and so even back then, teams still weren't as willing to go as light at linebacker as clearly they are starting to become. And I think he was trying to bulk up. So what happened is he probably put on a bunch of weight to try to prove that he's, close to 240 pounds and then didn't run a great 40 time, even though he played faster than that. And I remember watching the college tape of Dre Greenlaw, and he had some run and hit ability, and he could get to the ball carrier. I think Nick Martin plays faster even downhill than I remember the college tape of Dre Greenlaw looking. And one thing that Dre Greenlaw did in college that he got better at in the NFL that Nick Martin absolutely has to get better at, Croc, is, and look, this is, Greenlaw was 15 pounds heavier than Nick Martin and was still undersized, right? So we're talking about a very undersized linebacker in Nick Martin. We're talking single-digit percentiles in height and weight, in like 2 and 4th percentiles in his size. He is an outlier, even considering how small and undersized linebackers have become in the NFL. He is still small for those guys. But Dre Greenlaw kind of ran around blocks in college, and he's obviously like, the thing you know about him, the thing that you remember about Dre Greenlaw as a 49er the most isn't even necessarily the speed, which he was fast and could go run and hit guys. He played like an absolute animal, right? He had to learn how to take on blocks, and that's something that Nick Martin is going to have to do. And are they going to try to get him 15 pounds heavier, right? Did Dre Greenlaw end up playing at that 237 weight or whatever? Was it closer to 230 in the end? Because, and when I said, Croc, at the beginning that Nick Martin's evaluation was really easy because, the good is the good, and it is great. And he just flat out goes and gets guys sideline to sideline, and he's a good tackler. He's got decently long arms for being short. I think 32-inch arms, which is, that's the thing you worry about. You don't want him to come in with 29-inch arms or something like that. But he's a good tackler, and he finishes, and he comes correct when he arrives as well. But he runs around blocks, and when guys, tight ends even, and especially offensive linemen, when they get their hands on him in the run game, he gets washed out. He gets blocked up. And so his ability to take on blocks, and he even talked about that. Shout out John Chapman. Had a lot of fun at the 49ers Rush draft party, Croc. John had him on the 49ers Rush podcast and interviewed Nick Martin. And he talked about that. He's like, yeah, I like to keep space between myself and the blockers so I can run free and get to the football. I think he's going to have to learn to take on blocks better. And that's where you start to question, okay, how early in his career is he going to be able to earn a starting role? And even with the 650 pounds of muscle that we talked about yesterday with those defensive tackles, I mean, how clean truly are you able to keep all of your linebackers? He's going to have blockers in front of him. And so that's going to be the big hurdle for him as a run defender in the NFL, because he's going to have no problems just going and getting it and triggering downhill and tackling people if he's clean.
Yeah, we talked about West. We talked about, Alfred Collins and those guys' ability to hopefully, take up multiple blockers on the offensive line. That's going to free up the linebackers for the 49ers, all those guys at the second level. But the offensive guys get paid too. So it's not like just every single time, Alfred Collins, West, like they're just eating up all these blocks. Like, no, there's going to be guys that get to the second level, and you're going to have to be able to disengage, and you're going to have to be able to get off some of these blocks and still make a play. And I don't think I saw that one time on his film. Now, when he has a crease and he decides he's ready to go right now and puts his foot in the ground, and he can get there as fast as anyone. But the physicality aspect of it before making contact with the ball carrier is something that clearly has to improve. And it could be something that just improves with strength. I talk to my athletes all the time about being stronger, right? Getting stronger. One thing that I learned playing football was once I got stronger, it kind of gives you this, like something goes off in your brain, like, hey, you're strong. So you start to do things that strong people do, right? So now when you go and you want to get off a block, you're just more aggressive with it because, man, I put in the work in the weight room and I'll engage with this guy, get off me, toss him to the side and go make a tackle. Now, again, NFL level, not that easy. All right. But a guy of his stature, 5'11", we're talking about 5'11", 220 pounds. Maybe he's, around 227 by the time the season starts. That's pretty still strong and stout for a player. He's probably looks all rocked up and all that. So for him, it's making this a big point of emphasis in the offseason, something to get better at. There's some things in coverage I would like to see him get better at as well. And this is the more difficult thing because everybody runs defenses a little different. All right. Some people like spot dropping and they'll teach you how to spot drop. Some like more of match. And then some people like a mix of match and spot dropping. I like the mix as opposed to just pure match coverage. But when he's in zone coverage, which a lot of times they drop straight back, they are keying the quarterback and they go wherever the quarterback's eyes take them. And there ends up being these huge voids in the defense where it's like, Martin, you don't see this guy that just came from the side of the field you're on. He's right behind you, and it's almost like he just has like those blinders on. He sees nothing but the quarterback, and hopefully the quarterback takes him to the ball, which more times than not, especially at the NFL level, it happens too fast. Can't do that. So again, there are a lot of coordinators that will teach spot dropping. Maybe that was going on, but I would have liked to see a little bit more awareness, spatial awareness of guys that are running around him, because that was a consistent thing, which lets me know this is what's being taught at Oklahoma State. It's not that he can't do something a little bit different in coverage.
I'm glad you brought that up because I wanted to talk about the exact same thing, Croc, more about the other aspect of playing defense in the NFL. It's not just about defending the run. What about defending the pass with Nick Martin? And what about making plays in the pass game? We're going to break down Ole Miss 4th round wide receiver Jordan Watkins as well next. This episode of Locked On 49ers brought to you by Amazon Fire TV. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign in to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to go. Dive into hundreds of premium titles, including EA Sports College Football 25, Call of Duty, as easily as you stream your favorite shows. And how about the travel ability with that setup in the Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K? Talk about streaming all your shows in 4K. Find everything in one place. You ever find that you're flipping between apps and it's just not working all that great? Everything's all in one place with Fire TV Stick 4K, from Netflix to YouTube. Even watch Peacock and Locked On 49ers and all your favorite Locked On shows. So head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K, Fire TV Stick 4K Max, and Fire TV Cube. So we talked about the Fire TV and Xbox, and there are times, Croc, in coverage where Nick Martin's controller becomes disconnected, right? Like you're talking about the blinders. He has to be getting coached this, because literally multiple times on his tape, he is standing in the middle of the field for multiple seconds of a play.
Not move. Like does not budge.
Yeah. So this is to me, it's like it's not even a coverage snap for him. He is straight up QB spy. Has to be on some of them. But some of them he is in coverage. And even if you are QB spy, would like him to have a little bit of recognition about, where some receivers might be. And so the zone stuff is weird because, and this is what frustrates me. I want to talk about it with Jordan Watkins as well. And there's certain colleges that are worse about this than others, but just some of the schemes in college, it's so hard to watch this player and just be like, oh, this is pretty clean how it transitions to the NFL. Because the way they play is so much different in a lot of cases. So, and look, even if your defense is based in something that you would do in the NFL, the opposing offense is doing something so weird that you still don't get to see a lot of those clean looks. We talk about a lot with DBs, and it's especially evident in the passing game.
I'm glad that you brought that up, because that was something that it kept happening, and you see it in multiple games. So it's clearly what's being taught. And I think for a lot of people, they have to understand that, right? Like there's some things that you may ask a player to do that's a little bit different, or your scheme or your coverage rules that are different than what maybe somewhere else might be asking them to do. So if any 49er fans, if you're watching some of his clips and you're watching the YouTube games, or you turn on an Oklahoma State defense game and you see him just standing there, just know he is more than likely being taught to do that. And you would like to see him be taught to rebound a guy. That seems a little bit more elementary, but again, everybody has their rules and their philosophies. But I'm watching guys just run clean through his areas without any kind of resistance. I'm watching the Arkansas game, and the slot receiver kind of widens a little bit, and you would like to see him. Hey, yeah, you can widen with him a little bit. Man, get those hands on him to slow him down, and you can feel him. I like to use the term pressure key, visual key. All right. So pressure key is the key that I can touch. All right. I can touch my pressure key while still looking at my visual key. So if I do want to cue the quarterback, and again, we can see guys out of your peripheral. Boom, I can get hands on him. I can feel where he's going. Okay, he's climbing over the top. I can still kind of squeeze that while having my eyes towards the quarterback. But they didn't do that at Oklahoma State. He would just drop back, guys running clean, guys not rerouting. So, you can't slow him down to help maybe the guys on the back end or the safeties or nickelbacks and things like that. They're just running free through zones. And you got to hope that if you are going to do that, and I saw the 49ers kind of do some of that early in Robert Saleh's tenure, you better have a hell of a defensive line. And Robert Saleh did. 49ers right now, they're kind of retooling it. And when we say hell of a defensive line, I'm talking about pass rushers. I think that's still an area where the 49ers need to improve. So you got to slow these guys down a little bit, especially when they're zones. They're trying to run through there. Let's reroute them, knock them off his path, make it take just a little bit longer. And that little bit longer may be all the 49ers defensive line needs to get to the quarterback. But again, that was something that was consistent on film. And it's got to be being coached up by Oklahoma State as opposed to him just not being able to do something.
Yeah, so the zone coverage part of his game might need to be just kind of scrapped and built back up from zero, the way the 49ers want things to be done. As far as man coverage, you don't see a lot of it, but there are times when he's athletic, so he can run with the guys. I've seen him carry a tight end down the field, and he doesn't have a problem running with the guys. So there's a lot of athleticism. You would think that he's a guy that would be good in coverage, but he's not he's a former running back, actually, in high school. You'd think, he has a bulked up safety. He's a former running back, actually, in high school. So I don't know how much coverage he's done, really, in his life. And so that'll be an interesting aspect and a big part of how early he's able to get on the field for the 49ers if he is competing with, D. Winters and others for that starting weak side linebacker job with the 49ers. But the athleticism is there to be really good in coverage. He's didn't get a chance to see it. And one more aspect of, he's really good run and hit. We talked about he triggers, he gets downhill, he sees a crease, he gets there instantly. He can go sideline to sideline, run down not only running backs, but wide receivers as well. He will occasionally overrun plays and trying to avoid blocks rather than take on blocks. He'll get himself out of position at times too. So that would probably be one of the things you put in the negative side. Is something that he's going to have to clean up in the NFL. One aspect of his game, Croc, that is great in the pass game is how quickly he's able to get to the quarterback. He had more sacks in 2023 because he only played 5 games last year because he had a knee injury, which is part of the reason why I think he was really quiet in the draft process. Not a lot of people. There's only 5 games of tape that Nick Martin played his last year. But the year before, he had more sacks than any of the 49ers defensive linemen that they drafted this year. He had more sacks than Mykel Williams. He had more sacks combined than Alfred Collins or CJ West. He had 6 sacks in 2023. And not only 6 sacks, this is crazy statistical production from Nick Martin. He had 140 tackles in 14 games. So he's averaging 10 tackles a game and a half a sack at Oklahoma State in 2023. He had 1 sack and 7.5. He had 16 tackles for loss as well in that 2023 season. So just ridiculous coming into his final year, but then had that knee injury, only played 5 games. So missed the last 7 games. He ended up having 1 sack, 47 tackles, and 7.5 tackles for loss in 2024, did Nick Martin.
Speed.
Oh, by the way, and 2 interceptions. He also had 2 interceptions in 2023. Like absurd statistical numbers in that redshirt. I guess it was his redshirt sophomore year.
The one thing that I don't want to say question, but just when you see where they took him and you watch the film, it doesn't match up with this is where I take a 3rd round linebacker.
There just he's still an outlier size wise for me, and that's kind of the big thing. And there's a very real chance that, a 220-pound linebacker, 10 years ago, that's a safety, period. 5'11 and a half, 220, right? And so and then you see how small he is on tape. I think he's a pretty strong guy. He looks like he puts in time in the weight room. He's a team captain. By the way, I think he's smart. I love listening. And a 49er fan. Can we talk about that? I think we're bringing the lead. He actually grew up, even though he grew up in Texas, he grew up a San Francisco 49ers fan. So he is pumped. He actually has a Fred Warner jersey. So I love hearing that. But dude just seems really smart. And I think that's a big part of a lot of these players, like, it's West and, all the Michael Williams interviews. I think these dudes are really smart and, book smart, but football intelligence as well. So I think they believe they can get a lot out of him, and they've been really good developing these linebackers. And he's got so many similarities, strengths and weaknesses to Dre Greenlaw. They probably see a lot of that, and they also realize that he was the next linebacker on their board. And I think they know they probably took a guy that's a physical outlier size-wise, maybe earlier than he's projected to go. Would he have been there later? I don't know. They liked him. They took him. As long as he figures out the taking on blocks part in the NFL and his athleticism shines in coverage, it'll be worth it. But you still, like, just because you drafted him in the 3rd round, that doesn't mean that he's necessarily just going to get plugged right in as a rookie. He's a starter. Let's go. It's that development is definitely not done for him.
Yeah, I feel like there was just and there were a huge difference even just with where they were drafted. But the linebacker from UCLA, watching his film, is like, whew, give me that linebacker, right? And I watched Nick Martin. It was more like, okay, oh man, that guy has some really good athleticism. And that was kind of it for me. But also, I watched 24 season. Maybe if I watched 23 season, I get a different vibe. I get a different sense of maybe what he was. I bet if you go back a year and maybe how he was viewed and discussed, maybe he would have been higher on the consensus. Maybe, so I'd have to watch that film. But just thinking 49ers drafted linebacker, what I saw from the UCLA kid and what I saw from Nick Martin, different style guys, I guess maybe you could say.
Yeah.
But one looked like an NFL linebacker. The other one looked like more like a safety playing linebacker.
Yep. Different tiers entirely for sure there. But so some projection there with Nick Martin, but the good is the good, and it's pretty obvious with his ability to go get ball carriers. And so we'll see what he ultimately becomes. And Jordan Watkins, another guy with speed. We're talking 4.37 speed for the Ole Miss wide receiver. How does he fit with the San Francisco 49ers? Next. This episode of Locked On 49ers brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. As a small business owner, your work doesn't end when the clock hits 5. Your business is always on your mind, which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works just as hard as you do. That's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, share it with your network, and get qualified candidates all in one place. LinkedIn's new features can help you write job descriptions and then quickly get that job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. And there's so many ways to help you post your job because they know you're wearing so many hats as a small business owner. And here's a pro tip. Add the hashtag hiring frame to your profile picture to double your reach to qualified candidates. No wonder 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn helps them find high quality hires. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, Croc, Jordan Watkins, wide receiver out of Mississippi. He was 5'11", 196 pounds, ran 4.37, just scorching 40-yard dash time at the combine, 36.5-inch vertical, 9.11 broad jump, and played a lot of football at Ole Miss and then previously at Louisville. He was a fifth-year senior and started a lot of games, but was kind of a rotational guy as he started, was never really truly the number one guy. What kind of a role do you see him playing with the San Francisco 49ers? And when you put on the tape, what did you see from Jordan Watkins from a strengths and weaknesses perspective, the 4th-round draft pick?
I think because of the size, and I'd say 5, but she was 5'11", 197. That's kind of entering Brandon Ayuk category as far as size goes. Ayuk kind of a little bit thicker coming out, 5'11", 205. So, he had a little bit of weight on him. You think of guys like Jamar Chase, right? Jamar Chase about 5'11", 6 foot, 200 pounds. So Ayuk right in that range. And Watkins not too far behind those guys. He's a couple in and out cheeseburgers away from hitting that 200-pound mark. But he can fly. And 4.37, you see that speed on film. But he doesn't. I think some people would think like 5'11", 190 something. Okay, slot receiver. He doesn't look like a slot receiver to me. He looks like more of a pure vertical threat type guy. I would have liked to see a little bit more fluidness with route or fluidity with his route running? Like, is he that guy that's going to give you some of the things, even that we saw from Ricky Pearsall when he was coming out of Florida, right? Like some of that just kind of loose, oily hips, as the scouts like to say. Not saying he was tight hipped, right? So there was a receiver that I think you and I both liked last year. Went to the Chargers from Georgia. The receiver, McConkey, Lab McConkey.
Oh, McConkey, Lab McConkey. Yeah.
So I remember watching Lab McConkey be like, man, he plays fast. Man, look at his feet. He's quick. And he was a guy that I kind of liked to the 49ers. If they were going to pick a receiver at 31, it should have been him. That's how I felt. I don't think Watkins is like Lab McConkey as a prospect. Clearly he's not. I mean, he's drafted much further down. But I think I probably would like, because it's hard to see. He's running like kind of an air raid type offense where they're not asking him to be like this terrific route runner. They're not asking him to win one-on-ones with your route running ability. It's more just concepts, get to the spot. If you're there, you're going to be wide open, catch the ball, or, hey, win vertically here. Hey, run this crossing route here. And because of this, it should be open. There's more of that than asking him to do certain things. So you don't see route running jump off the page. Now, maybe if I go to his pro day, if I went to his pro day, I'm like, oh, man, like, look at how he's running these routes. Line him up anywhere. But right now, he looks like more of an outside receiver that has really good vertical speed, that can threaten defensive backs, right? Take the top of a defense. Maybe you put him in the slot to clear things out. 49ers like to run that dagger concept. We've seen them do that a lot, where you have the slot run a seam route straight up the field, and he's screaming as fast as he can to clear things out, get that safety out of there, and then the outside receiver runs a dig route, comes underneath, and it creates this huge void in the defense. You could use them to do some of those things. They did have a fast receiver that they drafted a couple years ago in Danny Gray, and I would say Danny Gray, in my opinion, I said this then, I said this when they drafted him, he did not play to his 40-yard dash speed consistently, especially in the route, where I think Jordan Watkins does more than Danny Gray. All right, so I think there's a lot to like about him. I'm curious to see exactly how they utilize him, but big playability, he has that. And he had a huge game against Arkansas. And if you go back and watch that, I mean, it's all vertical stuff, right? It's not, oh, let me just whoop these guys, catch this slant, make a bunch of guys miss, and outrun everybody. So you see his speed in that way. All right, so another kind of poor man's Brandon Cooks. Where Brandon Cooks, you don't look at Brandon Cooks and be like, oh, man, great route runner, but he's fast. He can run. He threatens guys with speed. He knows how to get open. He catches the ball well, and he's been a big play guy throughout his career. So he's more of that than, let's say, like Tyreek Hill, who clearly is super fast, but, man, the start and stop is great. The hips, he gets on guys. He threatens them in a certain way that other guys can't. Jalen Waddle has some of that coming out of Alabama, a guy that we were all expecting to run fast. Watkins isn't that kind of fast. Like, he maybe doesn't have that quick twitch that I've seen on film. But, man, a lot of big playability for sure.
Yeah, and you see some speed there, and I think he's better than Danny Gray as far as, getting open deep and the way he stacks corners. But at the same time, like you said, there are just so many routes and so many catches he made that are just like, they press the easy button over there. Lane Kiffin and Charlie Weiss Jr. is actually the offensive coordinator, which I just realized when I was studying up here on Jordan Watkins. And he's so wide open on almost every single catch. And it's like, he doesn't even have to run good routes because it's just things are open for him. And he's the route tree they're asked to run at Ole Miss is, like I was mentioning earlier, the frustration with what these college offenses are. It's hard to see how that translates. So as easy as it was to see the strengths and weaknesses on Nick Martin, I think it was equally as difficult for me with Jordan Watkins. And maybe that's just the scenario the 49ers were in. They're like, well, we have him ranked here. He's an athlete. Let's get him in, coach him up, and see if we have something here. So I don't know, man. It's difficult, and you almost want to throw out the Arkansas game, which was most of his production this season. He had 254 yards and 5 touchdowns against Arkansas, but Arkansas couldn't do anything. They're all banged up, and in fact, I think Lane Kiffin was even, and this is what's pretty crazy because I can't imagine Lane Kiffin being upset when you're scoring a lot, right? But he was even like, okay, we're kind of showing these guys up. He was kind of mad apparently about one of the touchdowns. Like, we're going too far against these guys because they can't match up against us right now. And so I don't really know what to do with Jordan Watkins. Is it a good pick? Is it a bad pick? I don't know. He's an athlete. I don't think he quite plays to that 4.37 speed, but there's clearly tools to work with here. I think he can play outside, can play inside. I didn't really think about it because looking at him on the field, he doesn't look like a big, imposing receiver. But you're right, he's not that far off from 6 feet 200, right? As far as his measurables at the combine. So I don't know, man. I think you just draft an athlete and see if you can develop him. I really think that's what this pick in Jordan Watkins is all about. And if he matches up with what we talked about with the high character guys, football intelligence and hard worker and all of those things that we talked about from some of the other draft picks, then you feel better about him being able to achieve that. Give you some value in the return game as well. I think he's really just an athlete. He's an athlete that the 49ers are going to have to develop. Aside from that, it's really hard for me to watch Jordan Watkins and come away with any real strong opinions about he's going to be really good here. He's not going to be able to do this in the NFL. I just see this as a moldable athlete in the 4th round.
Also, too, and I'm looking at some of his combine measurables. He had an elite 40-yard dash time at 4.37.
Mm-hmm.
The other stuff isn't like earth shattering, right? Like vertical jump 36.5, which is good. It's good. But, you see some guys that, especially running that fast, are just more explosive vertically jumping. His broad jump, 9.11. I had one of my kids the other day asked me, like, Coach, what's a good broad jump for, a receiver or defensive back? And I'm like, you want to get in the 10s. Like anything in the 10s, you're good. Now, he's just shy of the 10s, but you want to get in the 10s. So 9.11 is like, okay, you would have thought, okay, man, 4.37, man, he's going to jump 10.6. 10-7, and you didn't quite see that. Now again, we'll see, but you talked about maybe not quite playing to that 40-yard dash. Clearly somebody that can wake up and run fast, but you would like to see it like that part, right? Just look like a blur a little bit more on film.
And the other thing,
he does have vertical speed. He can get on top of defensive backs. He did it in the SEC. Like he has that kind of ability. Will you see that at the NFL level, and where it's a little bit harder to run away from guys? All right, how else can you win? Because in the NFL, they run man coverage a lot more than you see in college. The guys have stickier coverage. It's not as simple just to beat guys as opposed to, hey, I'm at Ole Miss. We're spreading it out. We're running, 4 wide, and we're just running these concepts. If I get the ball, great. If I don't, like the NFL, there's going to be a guy in your face half the time.
And the other thing is when Trey Harris, the other wide receiver that went earlier in the draft from Ole Miss, was healthy, Jordan Watkins is kind of an afterthought. I mean, he started 8 of his 12 games, so he was a starter, and he started a lot of games in previous years as well. But it was always kind of like just an extra guy on offense. He was never, the main guy in that offense. And then when Trey Harris went down, they're like, oh, okay, well, number 11, now it's your turn, Jordan Watkins. And then he kind of took off, and he was able to, he was up for the challenge. But when Trey Harris was in there, it was just like he was kind of an afterthought in the offense. So is that telling of what what they thought of him when they had a full squad, that he wasn't featured in their offense too? But he does shows an ability to track the ball. He has some athleticism. There's run after catch, but a lot of times there's just nobody around him anyway, so he can just kind of run around. So I don't know. I really don't know what to think. This is a head scratcher for me, not from a talent perspective, I'm not really sure what we're going to get here. I think this is a draft and develop and just kind of wait and see draft pick and an athlete in Jordan Watkins. That's my evaluation. Let us know what your evaluation is of these draft picks and all of them for the San Francisco 49ers at BD Peacock, at Crocky209. Thanks for hanging out with us every single day. Make sure you are subscribed up on YouTube and anywhere you listen to your podcast. Croc and I back with another post-draft off-season Q&A Sunday night for those of you on YouTube. It'll be in your feeds first thing Monday morning right here. Locked On 49ers.